Hey everyone, welcome to Wishing Well BBQ. I'm Dustin Wells, and today we're smoking a 50-ounce ribeye. Let's do it. Steak is one of my absolute favorite meals. And why just buy a 16-ounce ribeye when you can go to your local butcher and get this huge 2 1/4 inch 50-ounce bone-in ribeye steak? This thing is massive. And what we're gonna do today is we're gonna reverse sear it. We're gonna put it on the smoker. We're gonna sear it at the end. And let me tell you, it is going to be the best steak you've ever had. Let's see what we gotta do to get this on the smoker. In order to get this steak ready for the smoker, we don't have to do too much to it, but I do want to just make sure that I don't need to trim any extra fat or anything else off of it. And as I look around, I'm just kind of feeling to make sure there's no bone fragments or anything else on the steak that I don't want to cook. On this side, there's an extra thick piece of fat, and I don't want to cut all of that off, but I do want to just trim it back a little bit. You can see that's going to expose some of that meat. Look at the marbling in this steak. Man, this is going to be one tender, juicy steak. Oh man, I can't wait to get this done. Let's see what seasonings we need to put on this steak. The first thing I want to do to this steak is get some olive oil, and I want to put it on all sides of the steak. You don't want to go too heavy, just enough to get a nice coat. That way our seasoning sticks to it. It's going to give it a really nice color. We're gonna get all the sides. Let's flip this big old steak over. Man, this is gonna be amazing. Just gonna go ahead and rub this in. Get all sides, even get this bone side. So the first thing that I wanna add to this steak is some coarse kosher salt. Now this is a huge chunk of meat, so it can take a lot of salt. And I want to show you exactly how I season this steak. Something that's really important is you want to get an even distribution of seasoning. Nothing is worse than when somebody spends a bunch of money on a big steak like this and they just put a little bit of seasoning, scared that they're going to oversalt the steak, and it's not even all across the steak. So we want to make sure that as we go, we're going to shake this back and forth, and we're going to get an even distribution of this salt. And this steak can take some salt. It's huge. It's 2 1/4 inches thick, so it can take a nice layer of salt. We're going to make a great crust on this steak. Man, it's going to be amazing. The next thing I want to add is some table grind black pepper, and I like to put a lot of pepper on this steak. It's not gonna overpower. Remember, this is a big steak, so it can take some extra pepper. And I'm just gonna make sure that I evenly distribute this pepper all across this steak. Don't be afraid to get some extra on the table. We're gonna use that here in a few minutes. Press that down in there. And as you can see, it's nice and even all across the steak. There's no big splotches of pepper or big splotches of salt anywhere. It's all even. Every single bite, we want it to taste the same. The last seasoning that I'm going to use is some granulated garlic. And the same thing applies. I want to evenly distribute this garlic all across the steak. Don't be afraid to put too much on there. Remember, this can handle it. Pat it down in there. Now, if this steak looks like it's over seasoned, it's definitely not. It's gonna make an excellent crust when we sear it later on. It's gonna really give this meat an amazing flavor. Let's go ahead and flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Now that I've got both sides of this steak done, I don't want to neglect the sides. I want to make sure I get some dry rub and some seasoning on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take all of this seasoning that fell off the side and I'm just gonna roll it around. It's gonna pick up that seasoning. That way we don't waste any extra that we don't need to. Now that I've got this steak seasoned up, I'm gonna let it hang out right here on the cutting board and let it come up to room temperature, probably for about 40 minutes. That's gonna allow for all that seasoning to penetrate the meat as well. While I'm doing that, we're gonna get the smoker going. For today's cook, I'm going to use my Oklahoma Joe offset smoker. I want to use a combination of lump charcoal and cherry chunks. I want to keep my smoker around 250 degrees, and I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice blue smoke for this cook. You spend a lot of money on these steaks, and you really want to have a nice clean fire. So I'm going to open the firebox door and make sure I'm getting plenty of oxygen to this fire so that I get a great smoke on this steak. All right, it's been about 45 minutes and this steak is up to room temperature. Let's put it on the smoker. I'm gonna let this steak sit on the smoker for about an hour. We wanna make sure that the internal temperature of this steak comes up to about 115. And that's gonna be important because we're gonna sear it at the very end. And we don't wanna overcook this steak. Today we're shooting for medium rare, which is about 135 degrees. Before I take this steak off of the smoker, I want to go ahead and make a base that I can put on it while the steak is resting. Let's see what's gonna be in that base now. So what I've got is I've got half of a stick of butter and I've got it cut into 4 tablespoon sections. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this right in my container. And then I've also got a tablespoon of garlic, minced garlic I'm gonna put in there. And now all we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on the smoker and let it melt. To prepare for this sear, we want to go ahead and put some charcoal in this firebox. That way we get it really hot so that we can sear this steak off. Let's do it. All right, we've had this steak on for about an hour and 15 minutes, holding steady at 250 degrees, and we've reached an internal temperature of 115. Let's check it out. Oh man, look at that. Look at the color. The seasoning has really stuck to it. The fat is starting to render. It looks great. I do want to verify just a couple of temperatures in here. Oh yeah, we're sitting at about 110, 111. This is going to be perfect. So the next step that we're going to do to finish this steak off is we're going to sear it, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. Today, in order to sear this steak, I'm going to use my Oklahoma Joe's firebox. It has some grates in it. However, if you just wanted to use a gas grill, that would be perfectly okay because we've already incorporated so much flavor in this steak. And right now, I want to show you how to get those perfect grill marks on your steak so that that presentation is perfect. So we're going to pretend like our grill grates are a clock, and this would be 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. When I set the steak on there, I want to put it at 10 o'clock, and I only want to leave it on there for about 1 minute and 15 seconds. That way it gets those perfect grill marks. Once I've let that timer go off, I'm going to turn it to what would then be 2 o'clock on a different part of the grill. That way it gets those cross marks going. It's going to look awesome. All right, our timer's gone off again. Let's check out this steak. Oh yeah, you can see that caramelization is starting to happen. Man, that's gonna make a great crust on our steak. Now we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're just gonna flip it over, put it at 10 o'clock, minute and 15 seconds, then flip it and put it at 2 o'clock for another minute and 15 seconds, and this steak is done. All right, we've let our steak sear, and now we're just ready for the steak to rest. Whenever you have a really big piece of meat like this, you definitely want to give it plenty of rest time, probably about 10 or 15 minutes to let it slow down cooking. And hey, while we let it rest, why not go ahead and put this butter garlic base on the steak? So we're just going to take this mixture. It's nice and melted. That garlic has seasoned that butter, and we're just going to dab all over this steak. Hey, if a little bit of that garlic falls on there, that is perfectly fine. Look at that. The color of this steak is perfect. It's got a nice cherry smoke to it. The internal temperature when we pulled it off was 127. When resting this steak, it's not gonna climb that much in temperature. So we wanna make sure we pull it off close to the temperature of the doneness that we want it. We're shooting for about 133 degrees, which is a perfect medium rare. Now we're gonna wait 10 minutes and let this steak rest. All right, we've let this steak rest for about 15 minutes, and believe me, I am ready to dig in. But before we do, let's review what we did to prepare this steak. First, I went to my local butcher and picked up this 2 1/4 inch thick bone-in ribeye steak. It ended up being about 50 ounces. We let it sit out on the cutting board so that it could get up to room temperature, and then we liberally seasoned it with salt, pepper, and garlic. We wanted to make sure we get a nice crust on it. Then we put it on the smoker at 250 degrees and let it stay on there until it reached an internal temperature of about 115 degrees. It took us about an hour and 15 minutes to get there. After that was done, we put it on the firebox side of our grill to get those perfect grill marks and get that amazing crust on this steak. When we pulled it off, it was sitting at about 127 degrees. And as I mentioned, as it rested, I checked it one more time and it was 132 degrees. So now let's dig in. All right, now that we've got this steak sitting out here, I'm ready to cut into it. So I've got my knife here and I'm gonna cut right down the middle just to see how the doneness is. And it is so tender. And let's just check this out. Oh man, nice and medium rare, so juicy. You can see all of the juice coming out of that as it rested. Oh man, so nice. You see a little bit of a smoke ring from that hour and 15 minutes that we had on there. I'm ready to dig in. Let's see. Let's get a little bit of this spinalis. And if you don't know what the spinalis is, it's the ribeye cap that goes around the outside. And I'm just gonna cut me a little piece off here. Woo! That. Check that out. Nice. That is perfectly medium rare. And I'm ready to cut a piece of this off. Oh man, I can't wait. You know what I've got to do? I've got to try it. That is one of the best steaks I've ever had in my life. It has a beautiful cherry flavor to it. It has the salt, the pepper, the garlic, all of those flavors have just mellowed together. As we put that butter on there, man, all of it just soaked together as it rested. All those juices have redistributed all throughout the meat. And oh my goodness, it is so perfect. You have got to go to your butcher and try this steak. Thank you so much for watching our video today. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube page. We can't tell you how much we enjoy having you with our barbecue family. We absolutely love to have you. If you think that you could conquer this steak, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram by searching Wishing Well BBQ. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.